Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty fascinating. The vibrant cafe business that's really buzzing in Kochi, India.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
And to really get under the hood, we've looked at a bunch of sources and kind of boiled them down into a SWOT analysis,
Right.
strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Gives you that 360-degree view.
Exactly. It paints a really full picture of this, bustling industry. Now, Kochi, that's not just called the Queen of the Arabian Sea because it looks nice. It's a major tourist spot, a cultural center. Makes it a really compelling case study, actually.
Mhm.
So our mission for you today, basically, cut through the noise, give you a shortcut to understanding all the different things pushing and pulling on this local industry.
It's complex.
It is.
Yeah.
So we'll break down the internal stuff, the good and the bad, and then the external factors like where things could go and what could trip them up.
Yeah, what's driving success? What are the real challenges?
Right. And hopefully you'll get maybe some surprising insights, even some actionable takeaways out of it all.
It's definitely a prime example of how, a local business scene gets shaped by global trends, but also its own, very specific regional flavor.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start by setting the scene. Kochi's cafe landscape. We mentioned Queen of the Arabian Sea. It gets a lot of attention. What does that actually mean for the cafes there?
Well, that attention, it translates directly into booming visitor numbers. Think about this. In 2024, Kochi saw something like 22.2 million visitors.
Wow, 22 million.
Yeah, and that's a 21% jump from pre-pandemic levels. So that huge influx of people, it naturally makes it a hotspot for cafes, especially in those really popular areas like Fort Kochi. You just see constant crowds there.
And it's more than just raw numbers, isn't it? There's a whole cultural vibe.
Definitely.
The city's got this rich art scene, galleries everywhere, huge events like the Kochi-Muziris Biennale. That must add another layer to the cafe experience.
Oh, for sure. Places like Kashi Art Cafe are a perfect example. They blend the art appreciation with just having a coffee. It creates this unique draw.
Right, it's not just a transaction.
It's exactly.
Okay, so we've set the stage. Now, what's the secret sauce? What really lets Kochi's cafes thrive? What are their sort of built-in advantages?
Well, one big strength you notice right away is the sheer diversity in what they offer and the unique atmosphere. Kochi cafes, they don't just do one thing. They cover a huge range. Continental food, local specialties, and they often have really distinct themes, like Loafer's Corner Cafe. They've made a name for themselves with vegan-friendly stuff.
Oh, interesting. Tapping into that niche.
Precisely. And ambiance is huge. Think about Mocha Art Cafe, set up in these old heritage buildings. It turns getting a coffee into like a whole cultural moment.
That's fascinating. So they've got the offerings, but is the demand growing too? What about Kochi's own taste? Are people getting more into coffee?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a definite growing appreciation for specialty coffee. And not just from tourists, locals too.
Okay.
It's part of this, evolving urban lifestyle. Going to a cafe isn't just grabbing a drink anymore. It's social, it's a break, maybe even a place to work for a bit.
And what's kind of propping all this up? Any big economic factors helping out?
Oh, definitely. There are some strong economic tailwinds. Kerala's GSDP, that's the gross state domestic product, it grew by almost 12%, 11.77% in 2024-25.
That's significant.
Is. And the per capita GSDP back in 2022-23 was already pretty solid, around ours, 295,000.
As all.
This isn't just numbers, though. It's just people have more disposable income.
Right, for leisure stuff.
Exactly. For things like cafe visits, it's shifting towards, spending on experiences.
Okay, and here's something really interesting. I saw the local sourcing advantage. Kerala actually grows coffee, right?
Yeah.
How does that play into it?
That's a huge plus. Obviously, it could mean lower costs for the cafes themselves, but it's more than that. It lets them tell this great farm-to-cup story. And that really clicks with people today,
Yeah.
Consumers who want authenticity, they care about ethical sourcing, supporting local producers.
So it's a marketing angle, too.
A powerful one. It turns a supply chain benefit into a real brand asset. Builds trust, adds appeal.
Makes sense.
But what's really fascinating here is, even with all these clear strengths, these cafes face some pretty significant internal challenges, hurdles they have to get over.
Right, okay. So the first thing that jumps out from the sources, for me anyway, is just how intense the competition looks. We're talking, around 150 coffee shops listed in Kochi on Just Dial?
Yeah, about that.
150? I mean, does that mean the market's totally saturated? Or is demand just growing that fast?
Well, that number definitely flags a major challenge. That sheer volume means the competition is fierce, really fierce, especially in those prime tourist spots like Fort Kochi again.
So you constantly have to stand out.
Exactly. Always innovating. And then, layered on top of that intense competition, you've got seasonal fluctuations.
Ah, yeah. The tourism dependence.
Right. Cafes really rely on those tourist seasons, so their revenue can be all over the place. You get these peaks during the main tourist months, but then, bam, big slumps in the off-season. Make steady profits tricky.
And naturally, the cost of actually running the business. High rents in those prime spots, Fort Kochi near Lulu Mall, that must really squeeze the margins, especially for smaller cafes.
It absolutely does. And tying back to that seasonal issue, there's this underlying vulnerability because they lean so heavily on tourism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, domestic tourism bounced back pretty well, but foreign arrivals, well, they hit 7.38 lakh in 2024, which sounds like a lot, but it's still quite a bit lower than the 11.89 lakh they saw in 2019.
Okay, so still catching up.
Right. And that makes these cafes really sensitive to any dips in international tourism, which is, mostly out of their control.
Okay, so you've got these strengths, but also these pretty serious hurdles. So the big question becomes resilience, right? How can these places not just scrape by, but actually grow? What are the opportunities?
Yeah. Where's the path forward? Well, one clear route is tapping into niche markets.
Okay, like how?
Imagine cafes focusing specifically on, say, vegan customers or organic or maybe health-conscious options. It lets them grab a specific slice of the market that maybe isn't being fully served. Gives them a clear identity.
Yeah, I like that idea of specializing. And maybe not just the menu, but collaborating locally. That seems like a big opportunity too.
Huge. Partnering with local artists or tying into cultural events like the Biennale we mentioned that can seriously boost visibility.
Brings in different people.
Exactly. Different crowds offers a unique experience that's more than just coffee. It's about plugging into that rich local culture.
That makes total sense. What about location? Are there parts of Kochi that are maybe less crowded with cafes?
Good question. While those tourist areas are packed, maybe opening cafes in more residential areas or business districts, think Ernakulam or maybe Kakinad, they could tap into a steadier year-round local crowd, less dependent on tourists.
The local regulars.
Right. And then, of course, in today's world, you absolutely have to leverage digital.
Online presence, delivery apps.
Gotta have it. Zomato, Swiggy. Using those to expand your reach, especially for things people order often, like coffee, desserts, it feels like table stakes now.
Yeah, seems essential.
And another big trend they can ride is sustainability.
Ah, the eco-friendly angle.
Yeah. Using biodegradable stuff, really highlighting locally sourced ingredients. It lines up with what a lot of consumers care about now, globally. Attracts people who want businesses to share their values.
And this one feels very current with remote work being so big now, creating work-friendly spaces.
Oh, definitely. Cafes that offer reliable Wi-Fi, comfy seating, just a good atmosphere to get work done. They can pull in professionals, digital nomads.
I saw that mentioned even on places like Reddit, people looking for spots like that.
Exactly. It shows there's a real demand waiting to be met there.
Okay, so lots of potential pathways for growth.
Yeah, lots of opportunities. But, this brings up a crucial point. What about the external stuff? Things outside a cafe owner's direct control that could mess up even the smartest plans. What are the threats?
Well, the big one that always looms is the economy, right? If there's a downturn, disposable income shrinks.
And leisure spending is often the first thing to get cut.
Yeah.
Fewer cafe visits.
Exactly.
And people's tastes change too, don't they? Consumer preferences aren't set in stone. You might see shifts towards, say, healthier drinks or alternative beverages, or maybe even just less interest in the traditional cafe thing.
I have to keep adapting the menu, the concept.
Constantly. What's hot today might not be tomorrow. Then there's the whole regulatory side of things.
Like new rules.
Yeah, new food safety laws, business regulations. Necessary, of course, but they can hike up operational costs or just add layers of complexity, especially for the smaller independent places.
And you can't forget the big chains.
Oh yeah, definitely a major threat. Those global and domestic giants, Starbucks, Cafe Coffee Day, they have huge brand recognition, standardized products, big marketing budgets.
Tough for the little guys to compete with that kind of muscle.
Very tough. And finally, something we've all become unfortunately familiar with. Health crises.
Like COVID.
Exactly. Pandemics, other major health scares. They can just devastate businesses through lockdowns or simply because people stay home more, less social interaction, less footfall.
Right, a massive external shock. Okay, so weaving all this together, the strengths, the weaknesses inside, the opportunities and threats outside, what does it all mean for the future of cafes in Kochi? What's the strategic path forward?
Well, it helps to look at the bigger picture first. The global cafe market. It's actually projected to grow pretty steadily. We're talking a CAGR that's compound annual growth rate of about 5.4% between 2024 and 2030.
Okay, so the overall pie is getting bigger.
Right, potentially reaching something like 430 billion US dollars globally. So that suggests a generally positive environment for Kochi's cafes too,
If they play the cards right.
if they adapt strategically to everything we've just talked about.
Yeah.
So the blueprint for them to, not just hang on but really thrive, it boils down to a few key things.
Yeah.
First, they absolutely have to differentiate
Stand out from the crowd.
aggressively. Unique themes, niche menus, maybe championing local artisans, not just local coffee. Create a distinct identity. Second, really leverage that tourism connection.
Collaborate more.
Yeah, with tourism boards, cultural events. Embed themselves in the visitor experience. Third, embrace technology. Better online presence, smooth delivery options. It's crucial for reaching more people.
Fourth,
Sustainability. Focus on local sourcing, eco-friendly practices. It's good for the planet, good for costs, and appeals to conscious consumers. And finally, invest in those work-friendly environments. Good Wi-Fi, comfortable spots. Tap into that remote worker trend.
so it really sounds like smart differentiation, being nimble, adapting to what customers want and what's happening externally. That's the name of the game for long-term success there.
That's pretty much it. Finding that sweet spot between Kochi's unique local charm and modern innovation and demands.
Right.
Precise.
So I think the big takeaway from our deep dive today is pretty clear. Kochi's cafe scene. It's got massive potential for growth. You've got the tourist draw, the cultural energy, the economic momentum, all huge assets. But navigating that really intense competition and the reliance on tourism, that's going to take some sharp strategic moves and a whole lot of adaptability.
It really does show how even a seemingly small local industry is tied into so many bigger forces, and how digging into the data like this with a SWOT framework can give you that comprehensive picture.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
Which actually makes you wonder, how could you apply a similar framework, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, to other local businesses you might be curious about, or even perhaps personal projects you're thinking of?
That's a great point. The analytical approach itself is really versatile.
Exactly. Its power is pretty universal for understanding complex situations.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this particular exploration. We hope you found it insightful.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.